Hey guys, welcome back to Mom Talk. Today we are with Haley. She is the owner of Clubhouse Pediatric Therapy here in Rockwall, and she is a licensed speech-language pathologist. So we're going to be talking about all things that today. But before we do that, I wanted to talk about why Dr. Chloe's not here. So as many of you guys know, that Dr. Chloe is now in Allen on Wednesdays and Fridays. So Mom Talk's going to look a little bit different each month. So 1 month we're going to have Chloe, 1 month we're going to have Dr. Cassidy, and it's going to kind of flip back and forth based off of when they are here in Rockwall and able to do this with us. So I just want you guys to know that they are still very much a part of our and valued part of our team. We're just not with us today. So Haley, we're going to start off with what is oral myofunctional therapy?
Orofacial myofunctional therapy is a really fancy word for us retraining the muscles of the mouth and the face so that we can make sure everything grows in the most optimal way that's going to support our airway.
So then what are some of the red flags that you're looking for?
Red flags, I like to break down into daytime and nighttime. So during the day, it might look like a kiddo being either really wired during the day or really tired, dysregulated in some way. And then it might look like them mouth breathing or being chronically sick, congested. It might look like really prolonged speech issues. And they might have been in speech therapy for a long time, working on the same sounds, and it's not getting better. Or let's see, any habits that they might have, like thumb sucking or things like that. And then at nighttime, it's going to look like any movement. So a really restless sleeper, it might look like any sounds that they're making. So teeth grinding, snoring, noisy breathing. They might be wetting the bed, or they might have their mouth wide open. They might sleep in a really funny position. Any of that can be a red flag that they're not getting good quality oxygen while they're sleeping. So all those would be red flags.
So what are some of your goals with these kiddos?
We like to work on nasal breathing and diaphragmatic breathing. We like to work on their oral resting posture, their swallow pattern, and eliminating any habits that are hindering good growth and development of the jaws and the face.
Okay. So you mentioned nasal breathing. Why is that important?
Nasal breathing is so important for our overall health. Our nose is really designed to help filter out any toxins in the air. So when we breathe in, the air filters through our sinuses, and there's nitric oxide in there. It's antiviral, antibacterial. It's going to help kill anything that's going to hurt our body and fill our body with inflammation. So breathing through our nose helps us get really good, clean air. If we're breathing through our mouth, we're missing out on all the benefits of that. And then every toxin in the air is just hitting our body and can really inflame things.
You also mentioned oral rest posture. What is that?
Oral resting posture is just the way our lips and tongue rest. So at rest, we want our tongue to be all the way up against the palate. If you think about clicking your tongue and then just kind of let it rest up there before it would drop down, that's kind of the placement we're talking about. So tongue resting all the way up on the palate, lips closed. That's where we want our body to be at rest. Anytime we're not talking or eating, that's where things should be. So that's what oral rest posture is. And the reason it's so important is that our jaws really grow and develop based on that oral resting posture. So if you think about a little baby and their skull, pretty much everyone knows if they lay a certain way all the time, that side of their skull might get flat. And that's because there's sutures that are still really flexible. Everything's growing and developing based on the pressures pushing on it. The palate, the roof of your mouth, is the same way. So there's a suture in the middle, and everything is growing and developing when they're little based on the pressures pushing on it until it fuses, and then it's more solid. So when the tongue is up, the palate is growing nice and wide around the tongue. So we have a good wide palate. And if we're resting with our lips closed, we're nasal breathing, which is so important. And it's also going to help make sure all of our teeth and everything grow nice and straight.
So why do we want our palate wide?
The palate is actually also the floor of the nasal cavity. So if our palate is nice and wide, we're going to have a lot of space to breathe well through our nose. And if it grows high and narrow, then we have a lot less space to breathe through our nose, and we're probably not going to. We're going to end up opening our mouth to breathe because our body's always going to put that first. And so if we can't breathe well there, we're going to be mouth breathing. So we like for that nasal cavity to be nice and open. We also look at the back of the kiddo's throat or anybody's throat. So when the palate is really narrow, it's narrow all the way to the back. So we're looking at the pharynx, that back of the throat. And if it's really narrow, again, we're not going to have as much space to breathe well and get good quality oxygen versus if the palate is nice and wide. It's like moving tent posts out to the side. It's nice and wide, and then we have a lot of space to breathe.
Okay. So then that brings me to, like, does swallowing have anything to do with this and swallow pattern? And do you work with that?
Yes, the swallow pattern, for the same reason, is also important because where the tongue pushes when we swallow has a big impact on how everything grows and develops. So it applies a lot of pressure. When we swallow, way more than, for example, orthodontics apply. The tongue is really strong. So when we're swallowing and the tongue is pushing up on the palate, that's reinforcing that good growth and development versus if we're pushing forward. That can cause the jaws to move out of alignment. We can have an overbite or an underbite, depending on where the pressure is. We could have an open bite where the teeth grow around the tongue coming through. Different things can happen, but overall, we're going to have the best growth and development, the best airway if our tongue is pushing up every time we swallow. It's also important because if a kiddo isn't swallowing in a really coordinated way, they can lose track of where the food is and feel out of control of the timing of their swallow. So sometimes kids get really picky with the type of foods they'll eat if they're not really in control of that swallow.
Interesting. I didn't know that. That's cool. So then what are some of the habits that you're trying to eliminate doing all these?
Any habit that's causing us not to have that proper growth and development. So a thumb-sucking kiddo is going to have a palate that's really high and narrow because it'll grow right around that thumb. So we can actually see the thumbprint on the roof of their mouth when they open if they're sucking their thumb a lot. Any pacifier use for a prolonged period of time, same thing. Bottle use, there's lots of things that can cause the palate to not grow nice and wide. So anything like that. I've seen all kinds of combinations of fingers. I've even seen kids suck their tongue. They'll rest with it through the teeth and suck on their tongue. Different things can happen that are going to cause things not to grow the way we want to have a good airway. So any of that we can work to correct. But what's really interesting with habit elimination is that there's actually neuroreceptors on the palate. On the roof of the mouth, there are neuroreceptors that help calm the body down. So when our tongue is resting up and lips are closed, we're stimulating that palate and it helps keep our body really calm. So little babies are smart. They know when they go to rest, if their tongue, is up as it should be, unless there was some underlying factor, they're going to be more calm and ready to go to sleep when it's time to sleep. But if there's something hindering that, the tongue isn't resting up there. So maybe they can't breathe well, they're really congested, things like that are going on. They're going to have to open their mouth to breathe and their tongue isn't up. They're not getting that stimulation. Same thing if the baby's tongue-tied, if their tongue can't rest up where it needs to. They're not getting that good stimulation on the palate, so they want something else to help them feel good. They're smart, and they know I feel better when I have something up there on the palate. So a lot of times we see kiddos with a tongue tie or chronic allergies be the kids that want to hang on to those for a long time. And they don't know why, they just know their body feels better. So what we like to do at Clubhouse is really address any underlying factors first and work on that oral resting posture before we take the habit away. That way they're much more calm and regulated instead of it feeling almost cruel to take a pacifier away from a kiddo who's just traumatized not to have it. There's a reason. So if we get that good oral resting posture in place first, it won't be the same as if we just take it out cold turkey. So I like to help them first before we take it.
What other professionals do you work with?
We work with body workers a lot. So a lot of these kids are really in fight or flight because they're not sleeping well and they just get so dysregulated. So body work is going to really, really help with that. We also work a lot with orthodontists. When the palate is really high and narrow, we need help getting it wide again so they can breathe. So we can train that good oral rest posture. So a lot with orthodontists, or even there's some specialized dentists who do really early expansion, like as young as 4 years old, which is so cool because it moves a lot better before things have fused and become solid. So the earlier the better. We work with allergists. A lot of times allergies are an underlying factor for a myofunctional disorder. If they can't breathe through their nose, we're never going to be able to train them to do it if they have chronic allergies that are not treated. So allergists can play a role. We work with release providers who are very specialized in releasing tethered oral tissues, so tongue ties, lip ties, buccal ties, when that is an underlying factor. We work with release providers. We also work with ENTs when it's really necessary. If a kiddo has really chronically inflamed tonsils, adenoids, that can be another factor that could be hindering how they're breathing and how they're not able to breathe through their nose well. So that can be someone we refer to when it's necessary.
So you mentioned this tonsils, adenoids. We see a lot of kids come in here and then get their tonsils, adenoids removed. Is that always necessary?
No, it's not always necessary. Sometimes they're inflamed, but if we can train that person to breathe with their lips closed and breathe through their nose, get their tongue up on the palate, kind of out of the airway while they're sleeping, if we can really train those good patterns, we would expect that inflammation to start to go down. However, if they're so inflamed that we're not going to be able to train them to breathe correctly, then that would be when we would recommend going to see an ENT.
Right, so get the breathing. That's the most important
Breathing
part.
first.
Breathing first.
Now, as chiropractors, we know that posture can impact a lot of our kiddos, especially starting at a young age. But in your profession, doing what you do, how do you see that myofunctional disorders affect or impact posture?
It can have a really big impact on posture sometimes because if a kiddo isn't breathing well, their body will contort in different ways to open the airway. So sometimes while they're sleeping, they'll sleep in really funny positions to help open their airway, which can lead to tension throughout the neck and shoulders and funky positions with their neck and their posture. And we also see, because sometimes they're swallowing with their tongue pushing forward, we call it a tongue thrust swallow pattern. And a lot of times you'll see them when they swallow a subtle forward movement of the head. So they'll kind of subtly move that head forward every time they swallow. When you swallow around 2,000 times a day, that pattern over time is going to build up and affect their posture. So a big reason posture is such a role in how we breathe all throughout the day. If kids are resting with their mouth open, they're going to tend to have their head forward. They're just trying to open their airway. So when posture has been affected, it's always a referral to have you guys help work on that posture while we're working to address the airway and how they're resting and breathing.
I had a question real quick. So that posture, when we have these iPad kids,
Yes.
could the posture then affect the breathing and then cause an oral issue?
Maybe. We do see a lot of times if you watch a kid with screen time, a lot of times they're just laying there with their mouth open, just kind of zoning out like that. It's actually a great time. I often tell parents, hey, watch how your kiddo rests when they're watching TV. If their mouth is open, red flag, they should have lips closed, breathing through their nose. So maybe.
Well, and that's why we see a lot of men come in and snoring.
Yeah.
Is because they have that reverse curve. They're snoring as they get older. So yeah, of course, posture leads to reverse curve, which leads to not being able to breathe very well. So it makes sense, but you're kind of going backwards, right?
Yes, backwards. But both are needed.
Sure.
Both are needed to really resolve the issue at that point because it's over time.
So who all is a candidate for myofunctional therapy?
Anyone that's able to comprehend and participate in volitional exercises to retrain those muscles. So typically around age 4 and up, but we do work with other populations too. It's just not technically considered myofunctional therapy. So sometimes we see older kids that have special needs and we are doing things to help try to support that airway and their patterns. It's just in a more passive way. or babies. Like there's a lot of populations we can work with, but true myofunctional therapy, really retraining the muscles and the way everything works, it's going to be anyone who can comprehend and participate in exercises with us.
Okay, so then you do still see babies, but it looks
Mhm.
differently. It's called something else.
Yes, it's called feeding therapy. It's more of a feeding therapy approach when we work with babies. We're doing more passive things too. So we're doing the things to the baby. So we're, doing things in their mouth to help guide how everything moves, strengthen the tongue. It can affect feeding a lot in babies. And so we'll do a lot of things to help support that and train parents on things they can be doing to promote that good growth and development as they grow. So it can be more parent consultation too on different things they can be doing and using for different products they could use versus others, to help promote good growth and development.
That's a lot of what we do too
Yeah.
here whenever we see the ties in the mouth, right? It's a lot of parent education too.
For sure.
Wonderful. Awesome. Do you have any ways that we can support you?
Yes. Any time you are catching these red flags in a parent, it's a great time to educate them on how important that is. If you're referring for myofunctional therapy, them hearing it from you guys that they trust, first, like that, hey, this could help, with the way that they're sleeping and how they feel and how everything grows and develops. And over time, their airway is so important for brain development, everything. And so just hearing that from you guys first is going to make a big impact, because then it's not like the first time they've ever heard it. When they hear it from you, they're hearing a little bit from you that you think that's important for them. And I think there's so many, diagnoses these days that may be overdiagnosed. If kids aren't sleeping well, they're not going to be regulated, period. So there's a lot of things that if we can get their nervous system regulated, we can get them breathing well, they're going to feel so much better and function at their best. And, I think anytime we have a concern with ADHD or something, some learning thing, anytime something like that is going on and that's a concern, I think we should be looking at a kid's sleep. I think that should be one of the first stops is, how are they sleeping? Do they have any of those red flags? Because of course they're not functioning at their best.
Yeah.
Man, I learned so much today. I mean, I've always loved you and trusted you, but man, there's just so much
Wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
If any of y'all have any more questions for Haley, please send them over. We'll get them to her. She'll answer them. We'll get them back to you. But she is amazing. She's just one of the many providers that we love, but we really love Haley. You can see why now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed this.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming and talking with us. And we want to keep doing this. So if you guys have any providers or any professionals or any profession that you guys want us to sit down and talk with about any sort of health issue, nervous system based stuff or not, please let us know. We'd love to try and reach out to them and get them here for our monthly mom talk. But we will see you guys next month.
Thank you.
Bye guys.